Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Tinnerman Cecil, and on behalf of Susie Spittler, I want to welcome you to the 14th Oral History Taping. It is Tuesday, May 8th, 2012, and this time we're going to do something a little bit different. It will be the first in a series of talking with people who are members of different organizations in West Milton. So, we're going to start with Larry Diaz, who is a past president of the Rotary Club. Larry?
Thank you. And Barb introduced me as a past president of the Rotary Club, and actually on my right is Steve Longenecker, who is a past president of the Rotary Club, and Ray Holmes, who is a past president of the Rotary Club, and Cliff Poling, who is a past president of the Rotary Club. So we all have that same title. What I would like to do is start with a little bit of information about Rotary International, because that's the basis of our local club. We operate on the guidelines and principles and the philosophy of Rotary International. So I'm going to provide just a little bit of history about that. Rotary International actually was founded in 1905 in Chicago. And an attorney by the name of Paul Harris decided that there was a need for businessmen to get together and to serve the community and to help establish some ethics in business. And that was kind of the basis of the beginning of Rotary, was on the basis of wanting to instill ethics in the business community. And from that first meeting in 1905, the Rotary Club, or the Rotary International, has expanded worldwide, and there are now 34,282 Rotary Clubs around the world, and virtually in every country of the world, and for a total of 1.2 million Rotarians. And that worldwide presence is an important part of the Rotary International, because one of the developing goals for Rotary International was worldwide peace and understanding. And the founders of Rotary International believe that if all of the peoples of the world knew each other better, that could help eliminate tensions and maybe somehow reduce the amount of conflicts that occur around the world. So that kind of summarizes Rotary wanting to establish business ethics and wanting to establish worldwide understanding and peace. And I turn to my fellow members here and ask if any of you would want to add anything to that about Rotary International.
I don't know if everybody knows it, but the reason we're called Rotary, because originally we rotated meeting places, and that's how Rotary came about, the name.
And it started in Chicago, and the headquarters is still in Chicago.
In Evanston?
In Evanston. Yeah. And so many of our members, or some of our members, have visited that headquarters in Chicago, and it's sort of nice to have it in our country. And also, whenever you travel, you usually see evidences of Rotary in countries all over the world. And Larry, I don't know if you get to this, you probably will. Polio Plus later is a big international project that Rotary has taken on, and we'll get to that later, as Larry said.
And Cliff, you led into something here about the visiting of various clubs around the world. Whenever we have somebody that would come from a visiting club, they would bring with them their club flag. And likewise, when our Rotarians would travel outside of our club, we would take to that meeting one of our local flags. And this is just an example. This is the Rotary Club of Cairo. And we have, over the years, hundreds of these that are actually posted on bulletin boards in the basement of the U.S. Bank that I think we're going to move out of there. But But this is part of that international understanding where people can go throughout the world and always find a Rotary meeting to participate in wherever they travel. Anything further on Rotary International before I start with the history of our local club? Okay. All right, let's talk about the West Milton Rotary Club. We have some pretty interesting history too, I think. Our history goes back to 1945 was when our club was founded. And it was founded we were sponsored by the Troy Rotary Club. And Art Schley was the first president. And one thing that in preparation for today that all of us have done is we went down into the basement of U.S. Bank where we used to have our meetings, and we'll talk about that a little more in the history. But we found boxes and boxes of what I would refer to as Rotary stuff, and we went through it to help get some of the history in preparation for today. And then we also decided, as a result of that, we're going to get a committee together to go through all of those boxes and decide what we want to discard and what we're going to save, because there's a lot of things that don't need to be kept. But one thing I found was a pamphlet that says West Milton Rotary Club Report of First Year, 1945-1946, by Art Schley, President. And like I say, we were sponsored by the Troy Club. The first meeting was held, or the organizational meeting was held at the West Milton Inn. Bessie Coate normally wasn't open on Monday, but she agreed to open on Monday to prepare a dinner for the organizational meeting. And I think there will be people that will be interested in some of the names of the original people. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read the charter members. Von Arnold, Harold Baker, Stanley Bowes, Francis Bradley, David M. Coate, C. Edward Durer, Robert Duncan, Jack Evans, Don Faulkner, Elmer Geeding, Cecil Hodgkin, Harold Houston, Harold Kessler, Maurice Kessler, Bob Krause, Ralph Lambert, Art Schley, Orville Maggart, Aaron Markley, Granville Minnick, Walter Mischler, Lou Moore, Ernest T. Pearson, Jack Roniker, Walter Steiner, and Howard Yunt. Those were the charter members. And of course, a lot of those are longtime West Milton names that many of you, I think, will recognize. Initially, the club meetings in the year of 1945 were held in Art Schley's home on Main Street, North Main Street, and because they didn't have any other place to meet. And he must have had a large dining room, because they would transfer their dining room, I guess dining room and living room, into a meeting space that would hold 32 people. And Mrs. Lay would prepare the dinner, and so they met there for quite a few weeks. I don't think it was the entire year. And then they had some meetings at the West Milton Inn. They had some meetings at hers. And then I noticed for several years they met at a place called the Sportsman Club. And I'm not real sure where the Sportsman Club was. Ray was saying he thought it was a building that was located now where Fifth Third Bank is. Is that right, Ray?
Yeah, that's what I would think so.
Okay. I'm going to stop at this point about initial history and ask the rest of the members here to give some further input on our founding.
Well, all I have is the booklet, which we've come to determine that we keep very good records. We must have 15 boxes worth of our history. And this is, as you can see, is a very old ledger held together with tape that discussed some of the things Larry just repeated about our first meeting and who is in attendance, how many members. We have numerous records. This club really kept fantastic records, even treasurer's reports and secretary's reports. We have the originals and everything in between. We have a committee set up at the time to currently review what we need to keep for the next 50 or 100 years.
This is a chart, this is the original charter, and it certifies that the Rotary Club of West Milton is a member of Rotary International and has our club number. I think it's different now, but then it was 6107, and I'm not sure, Larry, if that reflects how many Rotary clubs were at that time, but the date at the bottom was the 23rd day of October, 1945. And so this is our original charter. And getting back to those members that were in on the first meeting, one thing that's really nice about Rotary from my standpoint is many of those members were still in the club when I moved to West Milton in 1983, and through Rotary I was able to get to know them, and without Rotary there's no way I would have known Howard and Jack Roniker and some of those other fellows that were still there.
Jack Evans.
Jack Evans, right. And yeah, he was still with us when we had our 50th celebration.
And Harold Houston, I think, was...
Harold Houston was still in the club at that time.
And I guess we should point out that Ray Holmes is the, let's see how do I want to word this, got to be careful how I word this, is the Rotarian with the longest history with the club. How many years have you been in, Ray?
I think it's 53 years, and I have 44 years of perfect attendance. And at this time, there's nobody even close to catching me.
And then we were just discussing that the next person with the greatest tenure was Ed Lundensky, who sadly passed away this past week. And as part of our presentation today, we're going to have a tribute to him, but that will come a little bit later. But he was second in tenure. And then it surprised me that the next person, tenure-wise, is Jim Sarver. And I don't know about the rest of you guys. I kind of consider Jim a youngster.
Yeah.
But he has third longest tenure. And one thing special about this year is that Jim Sarver has never served as president of the club, even though he is one of the oldest, longest term members with the club. And we convinced him that to serve this year, and he will be upcoming president this year. So we're excited about that.
One thing
about Jim, he will be a third-generation Rotarian because his father was a member, Carl, and his grandfather, Ray Harlicker, was a member.
While we're on the original members, I don't know whether anyone noticed, but they were all men. It wasn't until 1987 that Rotary International changed the charter to allow women into membership. And we got our first member either in 87 or 88. I believe it was Darlene Duché.
Darlene Duchesne was the first woman member of our club, and in fact, I was on the Board of Education at that time, and it was our board that hired her as superintendent, and she moved into the district with her family. And we had always had a history, the Rotary Club had always had a history of always having the superintendent as a member. That was kind of just a standard operating procedure. Well, so the board hired a woman as the superintendent. So now what do we do? And I immediately, being a little bit of a rebel, as the rest of the guys here know.
Push the envelope.
Always pushing the envelope. I decided that I would propose Darlene Duchesne as a member. And it created a bit of a stir back then. And in fact, we had two members resign. They shall remain unnamed, but that's how strongly that some of the men felt like it needed to be an all-male bonding kind of thing. And so that was a bit of a shock to the club. And I have to say that since then we currently have several women that are members. And we've had and many over the past several years since Darlene Duchesne, and they've made a tremendous contribution to our club. And we wouldn't have been able to maintain our membership or the activity of our membership without some of these members.
Larry, a little more on that. the way that came about is there was a club in California, and actually they wanted to admit a woman, but it was in the Rotary Constitution that was not permitted. So it wasn't like we had a lot of people knocking on the door as women to be admitted. Actually, the club wanted to admit it, but it was against the rules. So that case actually went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and it was voted 9-0 that the Rotary had to change their constitution if they held out to be a civic club. So that's how that sort of came about. So we really didn't have a lot of grounds to argue, yeah. But it wasn't. But it was, as you know, I think it's important to know that a Rotary Club, wanted to expand their membership as the impetus for that change.
Yeah. And Rotary International has been much stronger for it, for having
Right.
having made that change. You know, sometimes we kind of feel like maybe we get the reputation in the community of being an old man's lunch club, and we hope that was dispelled since we now have women. It's not just an old men's lunch club. And as we talk more about what we do, hopefully you'll see that we're a lot more than just a lunch club, but that we do a lot of service in the community.
Coincidentally, I'd like to add about being the old man's club. Somehow 3 of us came into the club in 1984. At that time, we were the youngsters, and we would look around and say, this is the old man's club. Well, now everything's flip-flopped, and we have became the old man. So it's kind of ironic how that can come back to haunt us.
Well, I can remember when I was first a member that I think our oldest member at that time was Winifred Martindale. And Winifred he had a little bit of a difficulty getting up and down the steps of the bank, U.S. Bank, where we met at that time. But he always had the same spot that he sat on. And if a new member by mistake sat in that chair, you were in trouble. And as Winifred got a little older, as we all will do as we get to his age, it was fairly common a little embarrassing and fairly common that he would be nod off during one of the speakers and maybe even make a little snoring noises, and somebody would have to nudge him. So that was part of the old man's lunch club, but we think we're beyond that now.
I remember having a conversation with Winifred since at the time I was in the reserves. We were talking about some military issues, and he was talking about the World War. I thought he was talking about World War II. Winfred was talking about World War I.
Any other comments on that subject before we move on? Move on, okay. Well, the next thing I had on my list here was to talk about the various locations that the club has met over the years. As I say, the first meeting location was at Arch Lay's home, and then sporadically at hers or West Milton Inn, and then the Sportsman Club. And then after that, I think from the Sportsman's Club, and I haven't gone through all the records, I think the basement of the bank, what is now U.S. Bank, was where the meetings had been held for decades and decades. And then one drawback of the bank basement was the fact that you had to manipulate the stairs. There was no elevator. And as some of our members would age and had difficulty with the stairs, it prohibited them from attending. So we wanted to find a place where it would be more accessible. So our next stop, and guys, any of you remember the year, help me out, our next location was the Brick House Cafe. And while the space in there was kind of tight, it made a good meeting location. It was a nice, intimate setting, and Jolene prepared some absolutely delicious meals during the years that we were there. And then, currently we're meeting in the social room of the United Church of Christ, and that's our current meeting space. Did I leave any spots out, fellas?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. As we were preparing today, I was trying to think of some major events that have occurred since the club was established and up through today, and I'm sure
5 or 6 we moved.
I'm sorry?
It's probably 2005 or 6, we moved to Jolene.
That's,
Brick
yeah,
house.
that sounds right. And I'm sure I've left out some of the major events, but one thing I had in my notes, which Steve already brought up, was the introduction of women into the club. That was a major event. And then another major event was our 50th anniversary. And Darlene Duchesne was the president of the club at the time of the 50th anniversary. And I can remember she worked tirelessly for months and months to organize a 50th anniversary celebration. And she did just an absolutely tremendous job that year. And Cliff, I don't know if you want to hold it up or if the camera can see, there were photographs taken of the membership at the time of the 50th wedding anniversary, of our club anniversary. And that's something that we're proud of. Any major events that I've overlooked? I mean, there's lots of smaller ones, but those kind of stand out as major events.
One comes to mind for me was the start of Rotary International's Polio Plus
Good, yeah,
campaign.
absolutely.
That, I believe, was 85, maybe 86, spearheaded by Neil Hazel from Northmont, was really the wheels behind that in our local area. And since then, we've had another successful fundraiser just a few years back. But Neil Hazel from Northmont started the Polio Plus campaign for all the districts around here. And do you have anything to say about that later?
Yeah, we'll talk more
Okay.
about Polio Plus, but I know that over the years our club has contributed tens of thousands of dollars to Polio Plus, and we'll talk more about what that's all about. Any other events that either of you can think of? That
We had that 50th anniversary. Did you mention it was at the Troy Country Club?
No, I didn't.
And,
Yeah, talk about that, please.
And, we all went out to get tuxedos, and it was a real gala affair. And this was the West Milton record, Wednesday, November 1st, 1995. The front page had a picture. In it is President Darlene. Bill Rudy was president-elect that year, and he's next to Darlene. And Mark Cropland, Bill Robertson, Bob Johnson, Brad Vath, Glenn Ide, Mark Newman, and Marcia Dillon are pictured along with Darlene. So that was a very nice evening, and I do remember everybody was wondering who was going to ring the bell, and Darlene orchestrated. So Jack Evans, because he was a charter member.
Yes.
And honored him that evening because he was a charter member. And in fact, the only one at that time that attended.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, moving along to some other subject here. I thought it would be be interesting to know what the format of the meetings are, the Rotary meetings are. We meet every Monday at noon, and like I say, now it's at the United Church of Christ Social Hall. And our meeting begins with a ringing of the bell to call the membership to order. We have a designated greeters to greet members as they come in. And then once the membership is assembled, we pledge allegiance, and that's followed by a prayer. And then our Rotary Club is one of the Rotary clubs that I guess you could call a singing Rotary Club. We have songbooks that we sing from. Sometimes we sing fairly well, and sometimes it is embarrassing, especially if we have gifts. And I've even suggested from time to time maybe we should give up the idea of singing. And boy, I'm booed whenever I say that. So I think we're going to always be a singing club. Maybe not good singing club, but we sing. Then we have an introduction of our guests. We frequently have visiting Rotarians, as I mentioned with the flags, and sometimes other guests that are not Rotarians. We have a sergeant of arms that can levy fines. If you're late coming in, you may be fined. If you forget to wear your Rotary pin, you can be fined. We encourage members to spread out in groups, not always to sit with the same person, like maybe not all school people sit together or all of the optometrists sit together. That's not a problem. But insurance people, and we try to have the group split up. So if you're sitting with some person with a group that maybe should have spread out some, you could be fined for that. Am I forgetting any of the other fine? Well, now more recently, if your cell phone rings during the meeting, you'd be fined for that.
A lot of times you'd get fined if your photograph was in the paper for any reason. I don't know how that originated, but I never made a lot of sense. But you'd get fined.
And it depends on the mood of the sergeant of the arms.
That's
Sometimes
it's all in fun.
Yeah, because one thing about our club is we don't take things too seriously, and we have a lot of ribbing of the members that goes on constantly throughout the meeting. Some members ribbed a little more than others, but they all take it in good naturedly. And when we have visitors from the outside, they comment on the fact that we're such a friendly group that the way that we relate to each other, so that we have that special fellowship and we have a good time during our meetings. Then following the session with the fines, we have a drawing. We usually have raffle tickets, and there will be a drawing from the raffle. And then introduction of the guest speaker.
Let me interrupt here one moment.
Yeah.
He overlooked one of my favorite parts of the Rotary meeting. Happy Bucks.
Oh, yeah.
Each meeting, we're asked if anyone has any happy bucks, and occasionally a sad buck comes out, but a happy buck is the way to tell about a birth, a graduation, or somebody who's done some travel. So it's a time for us to get to know each other a little bit better with their experiences that they've done throughout the year, or any significant changes in the family. It's called a Happy Bucks.
Thanks. I did leave that out on my list. So then next is the introduction of the program. Each week we try to have a new program, someone from the community. We just most recently we had our last meeting. The program was a gentleman. I apologize, I don't remember his name. I think Ray's got it here. Where's his name? Oh, you're right there in big letters. Larry Blackmore from the Dayton Honor Flight talked about Honor Flight, which is an organization that takes World War II veterans to Washington, D.C. for a day and honors them with receptions, military receptions at the Dayton airport when they leave and get back, receptions, military receptions at Baltimore when they get back. And so he presented the information about that program. And that's kind of a typical example of the type of programs that we have, and is certainly an interesting part of the meeting.
May I say something, Larry? I think that, to me, is one of the interesting things about Rotary. These people know people that I had no idea this guy even existed. And here he comes in and shares his thoughts with us. And that happens all the time.
And I've been in the club 28 years, and one of the most memorable programs I've heard in the 28 years was in the bank basement. We had a speaker come from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base dressed in military attire, and he spoke to us about our duty to the country, our duty to our family, our duty to our church, and our duty to our community. And you talk about one that made you swallow, one that made you stand up and take attention. This was one of the best motivational speakers I've had the opportunity to hear. And it was back in the late 80s, so it was a long time ago. Does anybody remember him?
No.
Okay.
One thing else I might mention about our meetings is we encourage attendance. And we've had years where our membership attendance is better than others. And of course, a lot of the members are businessmen, and you can't make every meeting. But if you miss a meeting, you're expected to make up at another club somewhere around the area. And so Ray mentioned his years of perfect attendance. That doesn't mean that he's been to every one of our meetings, but it means if he missed a meeting, he made up somewhere else. And as we were going through our boxes of what I call Rotary stuff, I found this almost looked like a silver plated cup that says Rotary Attendance Contest 1947, West Milton 99.39% attendance.
For the year.
Followed by New Lebanon 99.35, Phillipsburg 95.84, and Brookville 95.34. But anyhow, attendance is an important part, because if you have membership that only comes sporadically, it doesn't make for a well tied together club. It weakens the club if we don't have good attendance at our meetings as well as our activities. So that's encouraged. And one other thing I was going to mention about the meetings, the Rotary International set guidelines early on when it was formed that Rotary is not of any religious affiliation. It's not of any political affiliation. And Rotary clubs are not to promote any particular religion, and they're not to promote any one political point of view or one political party. So we are to remain neutral in those areas. Gentlemen, anything to add on our meetings before I move on to the next topic?
The makeups are also a great way to attend another club in a different geographical location, and you may pick up different ways to do things, maybe some service projects that you can bring back to our club, and you can make up all over the world. I know when I went to Germany in the reserves, and I made up at a Hotel Rosa. I didn't understand much of the meeting because it was in German, but they found a gentleman who spoke, I could talk with English, of course, and it was a very pleasant afternoon.
Yep. And we've had a lot of Rotarians that have made up in a lot of different locations. And Steve, haven't you made up in some interesting locations?
Haiti. I was down in Haiti on a mission trip a year ago, and we are driving down, I couldn't say driving down the road, but I guess it would be called a road where you're at in Haiti. And there was the opportunity to go past a Rotary place that the standards weren't quite the same as what we're used to, but still Rotary was even in Haiti trying to serve the people. This was a year after the devastating earthquake, and there were still 500,000 people living in tents.
Okay, next I want to go back to the idea that West Milton Rotary Club is not an old man's dinner club or lunch club. Rotary International, as well as our local West Milton chapter, has specific goals in terms of community service projects we like to perform, as well as our participation in international service projects. And to be able to participate in these projects and to sponsor various activities in the community, we have to have money. And to get money, we have to have ways of raising funds in addition to our dues. There are dues for membership, but basically our dues just cover the cost of our meals and participation in Rotary International. So we have fundraising events. And one that goes back a long ways is the lemon shake-up that Rotary would do on the 4th of July at the community park during that celebration, and that has been a good money-making project. Another annual project has been the pancake dinner, and that's something that Ed Lendensky has kind of taken charge of, I suppose, the last 10, 15 years. We certainly will be having a change in our pancake dinner in that we have for many years had it in the cafeteria of the high school, and had it in association. Usually it was at the time of the first home football game. And so now, next year, as we move into our new school building, we'll be doing something different with the pancake dinner. I don't think we've decided yet, but maybe it'll be associated with the basketball game. But that's yet to be determined. But recently, I'm saying maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer than that, Bob Johnston had explored the option with the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections was looking for a reliable delivery service for the voting machines. And they had used commercial movers and just had terrible experiences. So Bob Johnston said, well, maybe our Rotary Club could take on that project. And he came to the club. The Rotary Club said, yep, let's do it. And we spent one summer building cabinets for these voting machines that would be in a form such that we could deliver the machines to the various precincts. And the very first time that we did it, the Board of Elections was excited about the quality of our service, so we've been doing it ever since. And that is a big money-making project for us, because the county was paying, or the Board of Elections, I guess the county was paying literally thousands and thousands of dollars for commercial companies to do that each year, and with poor service. We do it for the same amount of money with good service.
Well, the commercial companies were from out of the area, so they weren't familiar with communities like Covington, Pleasant Hill, Casstown, Tiff. So if they got lost, they just sort of went home. So the Board of Elections were scrambling the next morning trying to get the machines to the right place. And so with our club, most people are very familiar with the communities and have no trouble in getting them to the right location.
And as things develop, they put more, the Board of Elections asked us to do more and more. And that extended to, well, would you mind checking out the machines, plugging them in, starting them up, do a troubleshooting on them, and then if any that are problems, let us know. So we're providing a real service to the community. Besides that, getting funds to do the projects that we sponsor. And so that takes us. Well, we have sources of income. We do raise money through those projects. What do we do with it? Over the years, I'd like to just list some of the projects that we've done in the community, and then we'll talk about more about things that we're doing currently. But as we look back over the years, things that we've done in the community included building a Rotary shelter in the municipal park that's down by the fishing pond there. We built a similar shelter out at the Lowry soccer fields that was taken down when the new high school was built. We built we constructed band instrument storage cabinets for the schools. One of our members, past members, was Bill Robertson of Robertson Cabinets, and we have to certainly thank him for his skill and his time that he gave to the Rotary Club in many of these types of projects that us laymen would never have been able to have done without his professional skill. So Bill contributed a lot in that area. We constructed the signs at the village limits. We constructed, the year I was president, we constructed a play yard at the Lowry fields for young children. And Cliff has kind of taken on either taken on or been stuck with the annual maintenance of that facility and does a good job with that.
Selectively volunteered.
Did you remember that was done during my presidency?
I didn't know when it was done, but I've been out there a lot.
Yeah, he's done the follow-up. And then we built the cabinets for delivering the voting machines. We built those in an old set of dairy barns out on my property on Horseshoe Bend Road, and we had many evenings where the Rotarians would gather out there, and none of us were terribly good at woodworking, but my father drew up the plans for these delivery cabinets, and we had an assembly line going. And we would have probably a dozen guys out there in an evening and just have a good time making sawdust and putting these things together, and remember that as an enjoyable project. What am I leaving out?
You left out the schools. Rotary has supported the schools for years and years with numerous types of projects. One of the old ones I found as I was going through the archives was back in the early 80s. Rotary gave the school district $2,700 back then for microscopes, balances, dissecting scopes, crystal models, and map tothology. And we currently support them with numerous projects and or groups, school groups that come to us wanting different things.
Okay, then that brings us up to what we're doing now. We have established traditions of things that we do each year. And we'll go through and talk about these a little bit. One that got established, I suppose it's probably been 15 or 20 years ago, was adopting families at Christmas, that we would receive names of families in the community that were in need. And we, excuse me, we currently adopt 15 to 20 families, and usually end up serving about 55 to 60 children each year. And the Rotary Club purchases food for the holiday period for those families. And then each Rotarian takes the name of one child, and some people take 2 or 3 or 4, and spend in the area of $50 per child buying gifts. And then we get requests for special needs. A family needs a bed, a car seat, a high chair, and we will purchase those type of special things for those needs. And that's been an important a drive that I think that brings club members together each year, and that takes me again to remembrance of Ed Lundensky. That was one of the projects that he really enjoyed. I think he was probably a kid at Christmas up into his older years, because he became very sentimental about Christmas. He would always take as many kids' names as he could, and his wife Carolyn was also wanting to do more. In fact, I remember one year we had the problem. The family, the kids that he would buy for, they would buy more than the other families, give them money, and then sometimes somebody would say, "Well, hey, they got that," and so that just shows the generosity of Ed and his family. And 3 or 4 years ago, we had a Christmas party at Harrison's, and Ed dressed up as Santa Claus, and every Rotarian's wife, and probably every Rotarian too, sat on his lap and got a gift that year.
And our picture taken.
And a picture
We got
taken.
a picture taken with Santa.
Yeah. So I better keep going down the list here. We could talk a long time about that one.
One thing about that
Yeah.
food at Christmas time, one of the years we had a bunch of baby food, and we did not know what we were going to do with it. So one of the first stores we knocked on, the guy says, "I really appreciate you bringing me food, but all I can eat is baby food." So guess who got the baby food?
Another community project is the community Halloween party. For several years now, we've sponsored an event downtown where the Main Street, or Miami Street, is closed off in the business district, and we cook hot dogs. I don't know how many hundreds of hot dogs, but give people hot dogs and sponsor a contest, costume contest, and several other aspects of that to make it a nice community event. We sponsor a Farmers Day every year, where we invite all of the farmers in for one of our regular luncheon meetings, try to have a program that would be of interest to them, and we usually have a door prize for each of the farmers that come, and it's just a way for us to recognize them for what they do in our community. You want to take a couple on the list? I don't want to monopolize all the talking.
We sponsor a breakfast for the graduating seniors every year. That's usually at the end of May. And we give out 3 scholarships each year. Those are each $1,000, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's $3,000 worth of scholarships to the graduating seniors each year. Trash pickup along the roads, and the 4-way speech contest, where we have this recently had a member from our school district that came in second out of the district with 30 other presentators, so that we were quite proud of her. She does a very good job with the 4-way speech contest. Go ahead, Cliff, take a couple.
Before Cliff continues down the list, we ought to say what the 4-way test is. That's one of the principles of Rotary, the 4-way test. And the 4-way test is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And that's, again, part of the philosophy of both Rotary International and our local club. And the students that participate in the speech contest direct it towards the four-way test.
And one of the questions on Jeopardy last week was about the four-way test.
Oh, was it?
And none of the contestants got it, but my wife did.
The contestants must not have been Rotarians.
I guess not.
Sponsorship of the Interact Club, that is a club of high school students, the Rotary sponsors. And
I'd like to add that on the Interact Club. It was originally founded sometime around June 20th, 1969, with President Mike Horner, Vice President Roger Hurley, Secretary George Bowser, Treasurer Jeff McNally, Directors Jonathan Poole, Director Bill Elvey, Director Darrell Furlong, and Director Jim Sarver. So we've had an Interact Club since '69.
has it been, that was, I think the year I was president, it hadn't been that active, and it got rebooted, so to speak, or started up. Then several of our members go to the county fair and purchase livestock at the 4-H auctions. I don't know if we've done that recently or every year, but for a long time, every year that occurred. And along the way, we've given funds for the memorial at the park. Steve, I know you've done a lot of work with that. As far as landscaping and so forth, we've given contributions to the local library, and we've given funds to the school for the Angel Fund. I know you've been active in the memorial. You want to elaborate on that, Steve?
If you haven't been down there, please go to the park and look at the Veterans Memorial. It was 10 to 12 years in getting done. I got active the last 4 or 5 with raising funds, and then with landscaping, and then we currently had a revision to it. But Rotary was very instrumental in helping support that project.
I mentioned the Angel Fund for several years. I'm not sure if we've done it the last couple of years, but we would give the elementary principal $500 just as a reserve fund, that if they had a student that needed shoes or needed a coat, that they could purchase those items for the children. And that was in addition to the staff there that would do those things themselves anyhow. Mm-hmm. But that was, I think, an important thing that we've done. Anything I left off the list, fellas? That we ought to...
Well, one year, the Rotary Club took over the 4th of July celebration because of the fact that the chamber gave it up.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when I say we fried the fireman's waffles, we did everything. Okay.
Now I'd like to talk about the international service aspect of both Rotary International and our local club. We've really concentrated most of our time on local service, and that's, I think, the emphasis of our club. But we also have been involved in international service. And as Steve had alluded to earlier, a big part of that has been Polio Plus, in raising money for Polio Plus. Rotary International, I believe it was back in about 1985, took on the goal to eradicate polio around the world. And clubs were encouraged to donate extra money for that project. And Rotary has spent close to $1 billion in the polio eradication process. And it was hoped that by this time it would have been eradicated worldwide. But what has slowed it down or prevented that success is because of the wars in some of the impoverished areas of the country. You couldn't safely get in to inoculate the children, and until you can inoculate all the children, the disease can't be eradicated. But Rotary continues in that effort, and the Bill Gates working with the Bill Gates Foundation and the World Health Organization, that still is a goal. And we've had members from our district go to Africa and assist in administering the polio vaccine. So that's been an important part of our international service, is in contributing to that. it's been some time, but our club has had many exchange students over the years. As I mentioned early on, world peace and understanding is one of the major goals of Rotary International. And if we can bring students from other countries to understand our culture, and if we can send students here to other countries to understand their culture, we think it makes for better understanding worldwide. One thing that we did when I was president, the Children's International Summer Village, CISV, had a summer camp in Troy that summer, and they're there for an entire month, and they have I'm trying to remember the number of children. I think it was 50. Does that sound right? From all over the world, from like 50 different countries, and so they were looking for people to help with that. So we said, all right, we'll have a picnic for them. So we had a picnic out at Sarver's Overlook Park, where all those kids came out, and I remember just how exciting it was to see these kids and how they related to each other and how much fun they had with what we were able to do in terms of providing games and a meal and so on. So that's another example of international service. Can you gentlemen want to add anything to that area?
I think the only countries that are not polio-free, like you said, Larry, are the countries like Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan, and I think there's one African country. But India just has become polio-free, and I think their definition is no new cases for a year, but that could change because of the borders with Pakistan. So all the money's really helped a lot of countries.
Yes. Ray, anything to add on that?
No.
Okay. Well, what I would like to do is end our presentation with a tribute to Ed Lundensky. As I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, Ed passed away, I guess about a week ago today, almost, and his funeral services were Monday, May 7th, 2012. And Ed was not only an important member in the community in terms of being a well-liked and well-respected principal at Milton Union High School for many years, he was also a valuable member to our club and participated in many aspects of the club. And as we went through the various topics, I've already mentioned a few things about him. But the club wished to honor him a few years ago by having a scholarship in his name, which I'm sure will continue on in forever, as long as the Rotary Club is here. Gentlemen, would you like to share some memories and thoughts about Ed?
Ed was always enthusiastic about taking a volunteer job. I mean, he was retired, but yet he was more than willing to step up and do the pancake organization, up until he was there last year, as far as I remember. Mm-hmm. And he was also more than willing to help whenever, usually in the spring, I get a few Rotarians to go out to the Lowry playground to clean that up, spread some mulch and stain, and Ed was always more than happy and enthusiastic to go out there and help me. So that's what I remember most about Ed.
You have some memories you'd like to share, Steve?
No.
Okay. One memory I would recall is when I was talking about when we were constructing the cabinets for the voting machines. Ed was there just about every evening that we did that, and in most of the Rotarians it would come a few times, but he was there every evening, and he really enjoyed helping to assemble those cabinets. And I remember the fellowship that we had at the time of that event. Something else I would mention that through Ed's illness that progressed over a period of years, he continued to come to the Rotary meetings as he could, and you could tell there were many times he came where he didn't feel well, but he made the effort to come. And when he was there, even though you could tell he wasn't feeling that well, he made an attempt to cheer up everybody else that was there. and that kind of speaks of his personality. So, I would just kind of summarize by saying that we'd like to, make this presentation a tribute to him, and to say how much he will be missed as one of the members of our club. Anything I've forgotten, gentlemen, that we should add to before we conclude here?
Well, when I first got in the club, I had a couple of fellows. One was Bill Norris, who was the front B of B&B, and his helper was Harold Patterson, who had Patterson Flowers. And they literally worked all year on getting the Christmas party. And when you went home with a sack full of gifts. And they had one rule: we never met in the same place. So we were all over the area.
Steve?
Just to thank you, Larry, for taking this on and sharing it. What a thorough job you've done.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate everybody participating. It's been a good group effort.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you all very, very much. It has been most interesting. We've thoroughly enjoyed hearing about the Rotary Club. I've learned a lot, and I know everybody else has too. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Sure.